Now it's time to learn about StateNotifier. StateNotifier is a notifier created by Remy, author of a provider in Riverpod. By definition, a StateNotifier is an observable class that stores a single immutable state. As the author mentioned, StateNotifier is a recommended solution to manage state when using provider or Riverpod, and he recommends using StateNotifier instead of change-notifier. In Riverpod, change-notifier is rarely used and StateNotifier is used instead. On the other hand, change-notifier is mainly used in provider. Using StateNotifier in provider is not that hard. An example of using StateNotifier in a provider can be found in my Flutter Provider Essential course. The author's motivation to create StateNotifier was to have a solution to control the state in an immutable way. You can use change-notifier, but the immutable nature of change-notifier itself can make it difficult to maintain later if not handled with care. Immutable states makes it easy to compare previous and current states, implement undo, redo, and debug application state. Those of you familiar with React may have used the state time travel feature provided by React DevTools a lot. This feature is easy to implement when the state is immutable. Let's take a quick look at the StateNotifier itself. Constructor is a very simple form that has a single value of type T as an argument as shown in the figure. And the underscore state can be anything. So, like ValueNotifier, StateNotifier is a notifier with great flexibility. And as a major property, there is a state property. The state property is protected. That is, a property that can be read or write only in subclasses. And when the state value changes, it notifies listeners that the value has changed. Methods are similar to those of ValueNotifier, but StateNotifier's addListener returns a void type function removeListener. ValueNotifier's addListener didn't return any function, and you had to remove the registered listener using removeListener. In case of StateNotifier, the registered listener can be deleted by calling the return removeListener. And there is an option called fire immediately, which defaults to true. That is, if this option is true, it triggers once at the moment of registration. If this option is not appropriate, you can set it to false. Let's take a quick look at an example use of StateNotifier. Normally, as you can see on the left, the state is made into an immutable class. In order to make it an immutable class, you need to override the equality operator in the hash code in addition to what you see in the picture. Since such a task is quite cumbersome, most developers use packages to perform the task, and the packages that are frequently used are equatable and freezed. I will be making a new video about freezed. And an immutable class declares all members final because the value of its members cannot be changed. Since all variables are final, when a new state is needed, a new instance is created, and the copyWith function makes it easy. The copyWith function creates a new state that preserves the existing values for fields not given as arguments. And StateNotifier, handled by the app, is usually used in the form of extending StateNotifier. Use a constructor to set the initial state and define a function to create a new state. You don't need to call notify listeners after changing state. When state changes, listeners are automatically notified. There are two ways to consume StateNotifier. The first is using it with provider or Riverpod, which will be covered separately later. Today, we are going to learn how to consume as standalone. To consume a StateNotifier in standalone, use a StateNotifier builder similar to a ValueListenable builder. StateNotifier builder listens for state changes managed by StateNotifier and reveals widget related to the state. Very similar to ValueListenable builder. The difference is that you use the StateNotifier property instead of the ValueNotifier property. Now that we have covered the theory briefly, let's look at an example. To use StateNotifier in Flutter app, we install the StateNotifier and Flutter StateNotifier packages. I made a button to go to the StateNotifier page in main.dart, and the basic skeleton of the StateNotifier page is similar to the previous page, so I made it in advance. The person class is the same as in the previous immutable ValueNotifier page.dart. Looking at it again, the person class is annotated as immutable, and all member variables are made final because it is made as an immutable class. And the factory constructor to be used as the initial state is the same as before. And I also created a copy of the function that provides the convenience to create a new state. I also override the equality operator and hash code. Defining the equality operator in this way means that if there are two-person instances, the two-person instances are considered equal if the field values are all the same. Packages that makes these tasks simple are equatable and freeze the packages. And I said before, I plan to make a video about freezed. Next, we will create a person StateNotifier that extends the StateNotifier of the person type. As the initial state, I gave the factory constructor person.initial and created functions called increment age and toggle name. These functions are very similar to the functions in the person value notifier we create in the immutable value notifier page. It doesn't seem easy to find a difference other than that value is changed to state. First, store the person value notifier instance in the person notifier final variable, and declare an underscore person listener late variable of void callback type to store the returned value of the listener function. Next, we create the void type person listener function which displays a dialog when age reaches 33 and moves to other page when age reaches 35. In the init state function, register the person listener function using the add listener function or person state notifier and store the return value in underscore person listener. In the dispose function, call underscore person listener to delete the listener registered in person state notifier and dispose person state notifier. Next, I create two floating action buttons and call the increment age function on the first floating action button and the toggle name function on the second floating action button. Next, replace the center widget with a person type of StateNotifier builder. Assign person StateNotifier to StateNotifier, and builder returns a center widget that has a text widget as a child and displays a name and age in the text widget. Let's do a hard restart and run it. If you press the left button, age increases, and if you press the right button, the name is toggled. You can see that the result of this change is reflected in the widget. And when age reaches 33, a dialog is displayed, and when age reaches 35, it moves to other page. In this time, we learned how to use a StateNotifier. In this way, we learned about ValueNotifier and StateNotifier. It was Hey Friend. See you next time with another video.